He didn't even wait for the meeting to end. Tom slammed the folder on the table and said, "Claire, you're done here." 40 people turned their heads. I thought he was joking. My name was still on the agenda slide behind him. He smirked. "Effective immediately." My hands shook. I'd spent 15 years building this place, and he couldn't even look me in the eye. My chest tightened as I stared at the termination letter, already printed, signed, dated. 15 years, gone in a sentence. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw that folder back in his face. Instead, my voice cracked as I asked, "Why?" He straightened his tie. "Company's moving in a new direction. You're not part of it." The room fell silent. People stared at their laptops, pretending they hadn't heard. I stood slowly, legs trembling. My coffee mug sat half empty on the table. I'd brought donuts that morning for the team. Tom was already turning away, dismissing me like I was nothing. But he had no idea. None of them did. I grabbed my bag and walked out, holding my head high even as my world crumbled. My name is Claire Anderson. I started at Barrett & Hale Logistics when it was barely a real company. The office was a converted warehouse with stained carpet and secondhand desks. I was 24 then, fresh out of college, desperate for experience, and willing to work for almost nothing. Back then, loyalty actually meant something. I worked 60-hour weeks without complaining. I learned every system, every client, every shipping route. When the accountant quit, I taught myself QuickBooks over a weekend. When our biggest client threatened to leave, I drove 4 hours to their warehouse and convinced them to stay. Richard Hale, the founder, noticed. He was in his 60s, kind-eyed, and genuinely cared about people. "You're the heart of this operation," he told me once, patting my shoulder. I thought he was just being nice. I didn't realize he meant it literally. Years passed. I climbed from entry-level clerk to operations manager to VP of logistics. The company grew with me, and Richard never forgot who built it with him. Richard called me into his office on a Tuesday morning. It was 7 years into my time there. He looked tired, older somehow. "I'm thinking about retirement," he said quietly. My stomach dropped. "Richard, you can't leave. This place needs you." He smiled. "This place needs you, Claire. I'm just the name on the door." He slid a document across his desk. Partnership agreement. My eyes scanned the words, not fully understanding. "I'm giving you a stake in the company," he explained. "You've earned it. 20% ownership, Class A voting shares." I stared at him. "Richard, I can't accept this. It's too much." He shook his head firmly. "It's not enough, but it's a start." I signed that day, hands shaking. Over the next few years, Richard quietly transferred more shares to me. Each time the company hit a milestone, he'd hand me another document. "This is yours," he'd say simply. "You built this." By the time he retired, I owned 68% of Barrett & Hale Logistics. I never told anyone. When Richard retired, everything changed. Tom Barrett, Richard's nephew, arrived like a corporate hurricane. Expensive suit, designer watch, MBA from some prestigious school I'd never heard of. He shook my hand in the lobby that first day. "Claire, right? Richard's told me about you. Longest-serving employee?" His smile was rehearsed, teeth too white. "Something like that," I replied. "Well, I'm excited to modernize this place. Bring it into the 21st century, you know?" He laughed like we shared a joke. I didn't laugh back. He noticed. His smile tightened. That night, I went home with a knot in my stomach. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't name it yet. I pulled out the partnership documents Richard had given me. They sat in my home safe, untouched for months. Class A voting shares, majority ownership, transferable only upon death or written resignation. I closed the safe and tried to forget about them. Tom seemed harmless enough, overeager, maybe, trying too hard. I told myself I was overreacting. I was wrong. The changes started small. Tom replaced our project management system without asking anyone. The new one cost 3 times as much and worked half as well. When I mentioned it in a meeting, he cut me off. "Claire, I appreciate your input, but we need to think bigger picture here." Translation: shut up. He hired an entire team of consultants who knew nothing about logistics. They spent weeks analyzing our processes, then suggested changes we'd already tried and abandoned. I tried to warn him. "Tom, we tested that approach in 2019. It increased delays by—" "With all due respect," he interrupted, "your experience is valuable, but sometimes fresh eyes see opportunities you've missed." I bit my tongue. My department budget requests started getting denied. Projects I'd championed were shelved without explanation. In meetings, he'd interrupt me mid-sentence, then repeat my exact point 5 minutes later and get praised for it. My team noticed. They'd apologize afterward, quietly, in the hallway. I smiled and said it was fine. It wasn't fine. Tom started calling my department legacy operations. He said it during a board presentation, projecting a slide that labeled my entire team as inefficiencies to address. I sat in the back of that conference room, stomach churning, as he systematically dismantled everything I'd built. "These legacy processes are holding us back," he announced. "We need agility, speed, innovation." My processes had saved the company millions. They'd earned us our biggest contracts. But Tom made them sound like relics from the Stone Age. After the meeting, I stayed late fixing problems his new agile team had created. A shipment was rerouted to the wrong state. Client invoices were duplicated. Basic errors that wouldn't have happened under the old system. I corrected everything, sent the updates, and went home at midnight. The next morning, Tom sent a company-wide email taking credit for quickly resolving yesterday's minor hiccups. He didn't mention my name once. I stared at that email for 10 minutes, hands clenched. Then I took a deep breath and got back to work. The worst moment came during a meeting with regional partners. We were pitching a new logistics route. I'd spent weeks on the proposal, mapping every detail, calculating costs down to the cent. Tom was supposed to present it, but halfway through, he stumbled. He didn't understand the numbers. He turned to me. "Claire, sweetheart, help me out here. What's this column mean?" "Sweetheart," the room went silent. I felt my face burn. "That's the projected fuel cost offset," I said quietly. He snapped his fingers. Right, thanks, hon." The partners shifted uncomfortably, a few forced polite laughs. Tom smiled like he'd made a harmless joke, but something inside me cracked that day. I'd spent 15 years earning respect in this industry. I'd negotiated million-dollar contracts. I'd built relationships with clients who wouldn't work with anyone else. And he reduced me to sweetheart in front of people who mattered. I excused myself early, went to the bathroom, and stared at my reflection. I barely recognized the woman looking back. After that, the undermining got worse. My budget requests started getting denied automatically. My name disappeared from important memos. I'd arrive at meetings to find my chair missing. Then HR called me in. Brenda, the HR director I'd hired 5 years ago, looked uncomfortable. "Claire, we've received some feedback about your attitude." I stared at her. "My attitude?" She wouldn't meet my eyes. "Multiple reports say you're resistant to change, difficult to work with." Tom feels, I interrupted. "Brenda, I trained you. You know me." She shuffled papers. "I'm just passing along the formal complaint. You'll need to sign this acknowledgement." I signed it because I had no choice. Walking back to my office, I passed Tom in the hallway. He didn't acknowledge me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every interaction, every slight, every humiliation. They were building a case against me, and I'd been too loyal, too trusting to see it coming. The meeting invitation came on a Monday morning. Subject, routine restructuring update. I should have known. The room was too full. Too many people I'd hired, mentored, worked beside for years. Tom sat at the head of the table, looking pleased with himself. He started with corporate speak. Synergy. Optimization. Strategic realignment. Then he looked directly at me. "Which brings us to a difficult decision," he said. "Claire, we're letting you go." The words hit me like a punch. I heard someone gasp, saw faces turn toward me, then quickly away. Tom slid a folder across the table. "Effective immediately. Security will escort you out." My hands trembled as I opened it. Termination letter, severance package, exit documents, all pre-signed, pre-dated. He'd planned this. Why? My voice came out smaller than I intended. Tom shrugged. "Company's moving in a new direction. You're not part of it." He said it like he was discussing the weather. 15 years, gone. I stood somehow and walked out. Nobody followed me. I packed my desk in silence. 15 years fit into one cardboard box. Photos, a coffee mug, a plaque for my first client win. Through the glass wall, I could see Tom laughing with the new operations director he'd hired last month. Some kid fresh from business school who'd never loaded a truck in his life. My team kept their heads down. A few glanced over, eyes full of pity. Nobody said a word. I carried my box to the elevator. Hit the button. Waited. The doors opened just as someone walked by. Jamie, my assistant for 7 years. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something. Then she looked back at Tom's office and kept walking. The elevator doors closed. I drove home on autopilot, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I made it to my driveway before the tears came. 15 years? Birthdays missed, weekends sacrificed, late nights fixing his mistakes, all erased in a single meeting. I spent 2 days on my couch, replaying every moment. The humiliation, the public dismissal, the cowardice of people I'd considered friends. On day 3, I opened my laptop to update my resume. That's when I saw the email. From Tom Barrett, subject transition notes. He was asking me to document all my processes before my severance package processed. Wanted detailed handoff notes for continuity. The audacity made me laugh. A bitter, hollow sound. I closed the laptop. That's when I remembered. I walked to my home office, opened the safe, and pulled out the old partnership agreement. My hands shook as I read Richard's handwriting on the cover note. For Claire, the real heart of this company. I flipped through the documents. Class A voting shares. 68% ownership. Transferable only upon death or written resignation. I hadn't resigned, I'd been fired. The distinction mattered. I grabbed my phone and called the only lawyer who'd know the truth. Harold Chen had been the company's attorney since the beginning. He was 70 now, semi-retired, but Richard had trusted him completely. Claire? His voice was warm when he answered. I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. Harold, I need to ask you something. I took a deep breath. The shares Richard gave me, are they still valid? Silence. Then, you were fired? Not asked to resign? Fired. In front of 40 people. More silence. I heard papers rustling. Claire, Harold said slowly, you still own 68% of Barrett and Hale Logistics. My heart hammered. But Tom fired me, doesn't that? The shares aren't tied to employment. Richard specifically structured them that way. They're ownership, not compensation. He paused. Does Tom know? I almost laughed. No. Good. Don't tell him yet. Let me review the current corporate structure first. We hung up. I sat staring at the documents spread across my kitchen table. Tom had just fired his own boss, and he had no idea. Harold called back 2 hours later. Claire, you need to hear this. His voice was tight. Tom's been making significant changes. He restructured the board, brought in his own people, and he paused. He's been moving company funds. What do you mean? Furniture purchases, personal travel coded as business expenses. It's not illegal yet, but it's close. My jaw clenched. What do I do? You call a shareholder meeting. As majority owner, you have that right. I'll send you the template. He cleared his throat. Claire, be sure about this. Once you do this, there's no going back. I thought about that meeting. Tom's smirk. The coworkers who looked away. Send me the template, I said. That night, I drafted the meeting notice. My hands didn't shake this time. I scheduled it for 2 weeks out. Enough time for Harold to prepare documentation. Enough time for Tom to feel secure in his victory. I wanted him comfortable when the floor dropped out. Those 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I didn't contact anyone from the company. Didn't answer when Jamie texted asking if I was okay. I waited. Meanwhile, I heard through old client contacts that Tom was making waves. He'd renegotiated contracts I'd spent years building, cutting prices to win quick deals that would lose money long term. He gave an interview to a trade magazine, calling himself the new face of modern logistics. My name wasn't mentioned once. I read that interview 3 times, memorizing every self-congratulatory word. The night before the meeting, I couldn't sleep. I laid out my clothes, the same professional suit I'd worn for 15 years. No statement pieces, no power plays. Just me. At 3 a.m., I got a text from Harold. Everything's ready. See you at 9. I closed my eyes and tried to imagine Tom's face. That thought finally let me sleep. I arrived at the building at 8:45 a.m. Security recognized me, started to wave me through, then hesitated. Miss Anderson? I thought. Shareholder meeting, I said calmly. Conference room B. He checked his computer, confused, then nodded. I took the elevator to the 3rd floor. Walked past my old office, now occupied by someone I'd never met. Conference room B was filling up. Board members I recognized. Tom's new hires. Harold sat at the far end, folders stacked neatly. I took the seat at the head of the table. Tom walked in at 8:59, laughing with his CFO. He froze when he saw me. What are you doing here? His voice was sharp. I smiled, attending my company's shareholder meeting. You're... He looked at Harold. What is this? Harold slid a document across the table. Miss Anderson owns 68% of this company. She's called this meeting in her capacity as majority shareholder. The room went silent. Tom's face turned red. That's impossible. It's notarized, I said quietly. Signed by Richard Hale himself. Tom snatched the document, scanning it frantically. His hands shook. This can't be legal. She was an employee. She... Class A voting shares, Harold interrupted. Ownership is separate from employment. Always has been. A board member, one of Tom's appointees, leaned forward. If this is true, she has controlling interest. Tom slammed the papers down. This is ridiculous. Richard never mentioned. Richard transferred shares to Ms. Anderson over 8 years, Harold said calmly. All properly documented. All legal. I watched Tom's face cycle through emotions. Shock, anger, fear. You can't just walk in here and... I'm not walking in, I said softly. I'm taking back what's mine. Tom looked around the room for support. His CFO wouldn't meet his eyes. The board members were reading through copies Harold had distributed. This is... Tom's voice cracked. You can't do this. I stood, walked to where he sat, placed my hands on the table. Tom, I said quietly, you're fired, effective immediately. The silence that followed was beautiful. Tom's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. Security will escort you out, I continued. You have 1 hour to collect your personal belongings. You can't. He looked at the board members. Someone stop this. One of them, an older man Richard had trusted, spoke up. She has the authority, Tom. Majority shareholder vote supersedes everything. Tom stood so fast his chair fell backward. This is insane. I'll fight this. You can try, Harold said mildly, but I'd advise against it. Tom's face was purple now. He jabbed a finger at me. You were nothing when you got here. Nothing. I made this company what it is. I met his eyes. You made it worse. I built it. Richard built it. You just took credit. He opened his mouth again. Security, I said calmly. 2 guards appeared in the doorway. Tom looked around the room one last time, desperate. Nobody moved. He grabbed his phone and walked out. Guards flanking him. The door closed. I sat back down, heart pounding. It was done. The board meeting continued after Tom left. Harold presented evidence of financial irregularities. Furniture charged to the company, but delivered to Tom's home address. Business trips to ski resorts with no clients present. Consulting fees paid to companies that didn't exist. One board member gasped. How did we miss this? Tom restructured oversight, Harold explained. He removed the checks Richard had in place. I watched their faces change. Embarrassment. Anger. I'm calling for a full audit, I said. Every transaction from the day Tom took over. They voted unanimously in favor. Over the next week, the audit uncovered worse. Tom had been preparing to sell company assets to a shell corporation he controlled. The deal would have bankrupted Barrett and Hale while making him millions. He'd been planning it for months. The board was horrified. His appointees quietly resigned, and somewhere Richard's nephew was realizing he'd destroyed his own career. I felt no satisfaction, just tired relief. A reporter called my cell phone. Miss Anderson? I'm doing a piece on the leadership change at Barrett and Hale. Would you comment? Word had gotten out fast. Someone always talked. I'd prefer not to, I said. There are rumors Mr. Barrett was fired. Is that true? I paused. Thought about Tom's interview, calling himself the new face of logistics. Mr. Barrett is no longer with the company, I said carefully. I've resumed my role as majority owner and CEO. There are allegations of financial misconduct. No comment on ongoing investigations. Thank you. I hung up. The article ran the next day. It was fair, factual, and devastating for Tom. His carefully built image, MBA graduate, visionary leader, crumbled. Other companies started asking questions about his previous roles. Patterns emerged. He'd done this before. Smaller scale, different victims. But this time, he'd picked the wrong target. I walked back into the office on a Monday morning. Tom's nameplate was gone from the door. His office was empty. I stood in the hallway, remembering the day I'd carried that box to the elevator. Someone cleared their throat. The entire operations team was standing there, Jamie in front. Welcome back, she said quietly. Then they clapped. Not loud, not performative. Just genuine relief. I smiled, throat tight, thank you. We got to work. The rebuilding took months. I reinstated the departments Tom had gutted, brought back the experienced workers he'd replaced with cheap labor, restored the benefits package he'd slashed. Client by client, I repaired relationships Tom had damaged with his reckless cost-cutting. The company stabilized, then grew. I renamed it Hale & Anderson Logistics. Richard's legacy deserved to be honored. Every person Tom had humiliated got their voice back. My assistant director, passed over for promotion, became VP. The warehouse manager Tom mocked publicly became operations chief. Competence mattered again. Loyalty meant something again. This wasn't revenge, it was restoration. 3 months after Tom's firing, an envelope arrived. No return address. My name handwritten. Inside was a single card. You won. That was all. No signature. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I threw it away. He still didn't understand. This was never about winning. Tom's career never recovered. Word spread fast in the logistics industry. People talked. His name became cautionary. I heard he sold his house, downgraded his car, moved to a different state. Part of me felt bad. A small part, but mostly I remembered his smirk in that meeting. The way he called me sweetheart. The cowardice of firing me publicly to make himself feel powerful. He'd done this to himself. I focused on the company instead. We hit record profits that year. Our client retention rate was the highest in company history. The team I'd rebuilt was strong, loyal, competent. Everything Tom had tried to destroy was flourishing. Sometimes the best revenge is just doing the job right. 1 year later, I stood in that same conference room. Different people filled the chairs now. Young faces. New hires who'd never heard Tom's name. I looked around at the restored company, the culture of respect, the results that came from valuing people. I want to tell you a story, I said. They leaned forward. I told them about Richard, about loyalty that actually meant something, about building something real. I didn't mention Tom by name. He didn't deserve that space. Instead, I talked about what matters: competence, integrity, respect. Remember, I finished, sometimes the quietest person in the room is the most powerful. Never mistake silence for weakness. They nodded, taking notes, not quite understanding. Someday, they would. Today, I still arrive at the office before everyone else. I still check the routing schedules, still call clients personally, still remember everyone's birthday. Nothing about me has changed, except now, nobody questions my authority. Nobody interrupts me in meetings. Nobody calls me sweetheart. The partnership documents sit in my office now, framed on the wall. Richard's note is still attached. Sometimes new employees ask about them. A reminder, I tell them, that loyalty goes both ways. I think about Tom sometimes, wonder if he ever realized what he'd lost. But mostly, I don't. I'm too busy running the company I built, the one that almost forgot I existed, the one that learned the hard way that you can't erase 15 years of foundation just because you don't understand its value. I'm Claire Anderson, and I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.